Hi everyone, welcome to backyard garden tour of my succulent and cactus garden in zone 9B. I live in Northern California. It's considered a semi-hostile area for cacti and succulents, although in my backyard, because I have this nice big tree up here, which likes to drop a lot of detritus down on top of my plants. It actually does help from an insulation factor, and then as we move through the garden, I'll actually show you where I'm planting a desert museum tree, which you can see like basically over here. And then some of the pergolas that I've had to put into place that actually help to make sure that I'm not having problems with frost or extreme heat. But this is essentially a 3-year-old garden. I put it in, this was the beginnings of me starting to put succulents and cacti in the ground. Up until that point, I had actually been putting them in pots. And it was just started out as a collection, and I had a bunch of ceramic pots and I had a bunch of shelves, and I didn't like the look of it. Everybody's different. People who are collectors, they really like to put things in pots and they like to put lots of labels on those things. I don't, except for aeoniums. Aeoniums I actually put the labels on because I like to collect 80 million varieties of those and I want to make sure that I have them. But for the rest of the plants, I'm looking at it more from a designer perspective, and everybody's different. Some people will be really hyper focused on, hey, I'm going to be focusing on these specific plants and I want to know everything about them, and I have these super extensive labels and it's going to talk about the type of sun that they need and the type of water that they need, all those type of things, and that is not me. I am more of a designer. It is totally normal for me to rip plants out of the ground, take cuttings off, move them around. It's pretty constant. And so I'm constantly redoing areas, and a lot of my videos will talk about designing with succulents. I won't be talking, this is the specific type of plants or any of those type of things, but one of the things that you can actually do, which I learned pretty quickly as I was learning from other different designers or I was looking at different yards, is I got an application called Plant Snap, and you can actually take a photo or a screenshot and that will help you to identify the plant, which is really nice because then you can go out on the internet and you can see where you can find those plants. So again, for me, it's less about the plant itself and, is it in this perfect state? I'm more looking at what does it look like and the overall visual appeal in the space, because that's what I tend to focus on, just me personally. Again, the exception being aeoniums, where you will see actually that I have plant tags everywhere. So this is a little portion of my yard. It's part of the backyard. Roughly 4 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, I had all of the pavers put in, completely redid this yard area. I, at the time, was telling myself I did not want to have a yard that was a lot of maintenance, but this was before the cacti and succulent obsession took over. So one of the things I think I would have done differently is I would have probably had less pavers when I put them in, but it is nice, to have the space. I just probably would have put more plant space in so that I would have more growing space. I did end up doing the front yard. At some point I'll actually show videos about that, but you can see I've actually had to start going vertical, which is a pretty normal thing for a lot of people who are working with cacti and succulents. It's like the ground is just never enough and you end up having to put a lot of stuff up into vertical places. So I'll talk about that a little bit as I'm going through and some of the things that I was thinking about. This area of the yard, it's really challenging to grow anything over here. You can see that I've got some plants and they tend to be very green as a result. And pardon the fence. I have to have the fence here because I have little doggies who like to go in and stomp all over my plants, and that is just a huge challenge. So this area of the yard is really difficult for me to grow within because it doesn't tend to get a lot of direct sunlight. The coloring tends to be pretty poor for a lot of the plants. And that's just simply because the sunlight is not there at the level that I would like. However, as I've started to go up and on to the fence, I'm actually able to achieve that with many of the plants. You can see some of these ideas where I'm starting to try to figure out, okay, how can I go up? Because I just don't like the look of the fence, and I want to be able to put something in front of it. I'm not super excited about the idea of having to maintain vines all over the fence or anything like that, and the fence is a little bit on the older side, so my concern is that eventually I would have to take it down, and then it would be, you know, a big pain to try to put that all back in. So anyway, a lot of my aeoniums I tend to put up here. That's where you'll see that I have some of the little tags that say what the different varieties are of the aeoniums. And again, I'm just trying to figure out how do I cover up some of the fence and some of this area here. This makes it pretty challenging in this area. I get a lot of detritus from the plum tree. Removing the plum tree is not an option. It was actually given to me by my father when I first moved into the house, and so the plum tree's been there about 13, 14 years now, and that plum tree is something that my sons and my father gave me for Mother's Day, and so because of that, I just really don't want to take it out. It's kind of special in our hearts, and so something that we want to keep. But you can see some of the design elements that I put in here. Normally I would not have this as clustered, I guess is the best word for it, because there's so many leaves that I then have to pick out. You can see some of these big purple leaves right here, right? That's what I end up having to pick out, and there's just a ton of them. But you know, the way that I have sort of solved this problem is with the black rock. The black rock actually allows those leaves to blend in. You can kind of see them right here. And so it's not as apparent, but again, you know, it's just not super perfect or awesome. I do have some plants that I keep out in specific pots. This is one of my absolute favorites, which is an aeonium. It's one of the fairy ink aeonium, and it's just absolutely stunning. This little guy is just amazing, and it's got a baby, which is so cool. And I'll show you the green variety on the other side, which I just super love. Again, this is just a mishmash of a bunch of aeoniums. I actually got a delivery from Mountain Crest, and I didn't have any place to put a bunch of stuff, and so I just shoved it in there, and it kind of worked out, so it looks super cute. Got my cacti. I do tend to put cacti in like fire glass. I'm in a constant battle with my gardening service because the guy brings the blower through and it knocks all of it off all the time, so I'm always having to constantly fix that. So, you know, that's super fun in my life. But you can see some of these that I put in here. This is actually a gift from my son. And I just love it. I think it's super cute, although you can see it's starting to get leggy. Some of these are just not in the greatest shape. Leggy means that the length of the stem is just starting to get too much, and I would want this to be, you know, much more compact and tight, because from a design perspective, that, you know, the fact that I can see all that soil down there, that's just not super cute. So at some point I will take this apart and I will plunk all those pieces back in, make them tighter, you know, pull the rosettes down lower so that it looks nice. Just hasn't been something that I've had the time to do. Here's the green variety of the fairy ink, which again, I love these aeoniums. They're just absolutely stunning. I actually cut last night one of the, you can barely see it here, but I actually cut off a baby last night just so that I could give it to a friend of mine. But this is Aeonium Ink series, and it's just absolutely stunning. Really, really, really love these in particular, and so I have a lot of them that I've popped off and made cuttings, propagated. They actually propagate pretty well too. Some of the aeoniums are a little less friendly to that, but these seem to be better. So again, just super green. There's some, you know, when I had this in a different spot, it was actually super pink, this echeveria, and then you can see because it's sitting over here where it doesn't get a ton of that sunlight and that stress, it's just not pinking up the way that it normally does. But then I have other plants that, you know, the coloring is pretty nice. They're doing some pretty cool stuff, and so I think that's okay. So yeah, I had to do a lot of mounding. Because I live in Northern California, unfortunately you're going to see and have a lot of the problem with rainfall. So mounding up the soil so that it provides for drainage is something that's super important. So a lot of this, there was a lot of mounding that was brought in, and then a lot of the rock. And again, you know, this is January time period, so probably about March, April, when I am a little more confident about that is going to be warmer. I will then come out here and I will thin a lot of this so you can see much more of the rock design. So these are, again, some of the different aeoniums that I have, and how they are doing. And again, I had to go vertical, and there's another one of those gorgeous ones again, which I just love, with a bunch of babies, which is super awesome. So eventually I'll be able to pull some of those off. But you can see it does a little better up here, right? With creating the babies, because it's getting more of that sunlight. It's not so protected down below. Again, some more. And these are some of the trailing plants, because again, I'm just really trying to hide that fence line. So I started with really these, the Othnocapensis, which is super awesome for being able to cover up areas really quickly that you want to have trailing plants in. Those, when they get sun stressed, you can see portions of them are really purple, and then other areas are green. I just love that. I think it's super gorgeous. Plus it's just like a staple in my yard because it's so super easy to grow. You can actually see some of the yellow flowers in the background growing on some of these. And again, it's just, I'm trying to break up this fence line. It's just right there and in your face. And so that's a lot of what that's about. This whole area in here used to be super cute and tight. You can kind of see the elements of the design that were originally put in, but the aeoniums are going crazy because right now, this time of year, during winter time in Northern California, these aeoniums are growing like crazy. So again, this is another area I'll have to just pull out. I will have to really do something about making this look better. I also have this tree that sits here, and the reason why is because I need some level of coverage. That's how I keep the heat, and I keep the too much of the frost from coming down, so the tree kind of takes more of that than, you know, and supports the plants underneath. The challenge is that I don't think I really want to actually keep this here. I think I'm going to move this over into an area where I have an avocado tree that's just basically like done nothing for me. And so I will likely move this out, and this whole area, at some point I'll do a video about this because I'm going to redesign this entire corner with some really cool stuff, but I have to bring in a bunch of soil, a bunch of rock. It's going to be some work. So things to do. This is, again, some additional area, and you used to be able to see all of the rocks. So if you have concerns about, hey, I want to get started with, you know, succulents and cacti and using them in landscape planting, and I don't have that much, or they seem like they're really expensive, this is what happens after 3 years. They get so big so fast. So don't be thinking things like that. You can literally put cuttings in the ground. At some point I'll share some pictures of when I first started with this, and you'll just see like this was crazy level small. You could see a ton of the rock, and now I'm in the place where I'm gonna have to go through and thin out. So that'll be a lot of the work that I'm doing in the April timeframe. This sad little guy right here, we got a ton of rain in Northern California. I had a mammillaria sitting in there, and this was one of the first ones when I first started with cacti that I planted, and you can see that the composition of the soil was probably not in the best place. I should have had way more rock in there, and it's a big bummer because I've lost that plant now. And so yeah, I'm just trying to keep myself in a happy place over the fact that I lost that plant because I've had it since the beginning, and that's just kind of a bummer that happened. Anyway, so then this is some of the additional plants that I have in pots. My idea here with this particular one is that these are going to turn into tree aloes. So going to be really cool. And I kept them on wheels. So I put them in these gorgeous pots and then I put them on wheels because I would be able to move them around much easier. Otherwise, it would just be too much. Plus, the other thing, when you have pavers, you want to make sure that your pots, even though you're not watering them that much, with cacti and succulent, you're watching your water levels. The problem is that you can actually end up staining all of your pavers with the soil. So you want to make sure that you're keeping them up on stands, and so that's what that helps with as well. So again, just additional areas where I've popped in some stuff. This is actually a lantern. It has fairy lights in it, and they're solar fairy lights, so it lights up at night, which is super cool. Again, super overgrown. You can see, believe it or not, I actually came out here a couple of weeks ago and I thinned. So this is what happens. This is how fast these plants grow, but they're super beautiful. Trying to stay out of the sun so you can see how pretty all of this is. How absolutely gorgeous. I love the jades and all of the blooms that they're doing right now. It's really, really amazing. I do use bromeliads to kind of add some different texture and some beauty into the overall design. A lot of what I'm going for here is the tapestry level look, so it's where all these plants knit together. So I'll show you in a second when I get out of the sunlight so you can see it, that little section. You can see where it's actually growing together. And then again, I've had to go vertical, right? Because it is, once again, I'm trying to hide that fence line, but then the other problem is I'm also really trying to make sure that those aeoniums are get in the right type of spot. There's a little more filtered light back there. And I've run out of space. So that's what I end up having to do. The pergolas went in about a year ago, and it was because I was constantly having to do some not so fun stuff, which is run out with frost cloth all the time and shade cloth, trying to prevent a lot of the damage that was going on. And so now, you know, this is why these pergolas are here. I do cover during the springtime and the summertime. I do cover these up with shade cloth so that it's not as harsh, but hopefully this wonderful desert museum tree is going to be getting rid of that for me, and I won't have that problem anymore. So here's an example of a tapestry where all the plants have knit together. So they're planted together super close together on purpose so that I get that look, because I absolutely love that. A lot of designers, they really want to have space in between their plants. I like this look. I want this look. And so it's, you know, something that I really, really, really enjoy. Not everybody's going to feel that way about the plants and how they're put in the landscape. These little trails that you see, it's because I have to get back to the back sometimes so that I can do a lot of the work that I need to do to trim. This aloe right here is super beautiful. I can actually make it red just by cutting it off. At some point I'll do a video that talks a little bit about that and why that's super cute. All right, this is one of the echeverries that I originally had in a pot when I first started doing cacti and succulents, and the thing has just gotten huge. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and so that is one of the ones. I think I've beheaded it like several times. The guy just keeps on growing. It's pretty cool. Anyway, again, it's only 3 years old, so this is what happens. You get just a huge, huge amount of plants, and then they end up just growing like crazy. You can see more of the design where I've actually started cleaning it out and simplifying a lot of the look, just because I didn't want it to be so busy. So I'm cleaning a lot of this upfront area to make it super beautiful. And then I allow the bigger plants towards the back. Some of this is, the plants actually grow differently when you put them in the ground versus when you have them in pots. So it's super interesting to see which of these actually grow. And a lot of my learning over the past 4 years was figuring out that I had to basically move some of these so that they were in the right spots. But again, here I've had to go vertical. A lot of my aeonium collection is over there. More of the tree aloe is in this section. And little doggies, little cute doggies is part of it. But the same concept here, right? I've got the pot that allows me to move the tree aloe, because eventually this is going to get super big. And again, the design just continues. And this was the original portion of the yard. This was the original part that I actually put in. And I've learned a lot as I've gone through. Like I said, I learned that some of the plants need to be towards the back. Some of them were smaller. They need to be towards the front. Some of it was just the growing that started happening with the plants. Some of them grow a lot faster than others. And you just kind of figure that out as you're going. But the thing that's cool about succulents and cacti is that you kind of can't screw up. You'll notice if a plant's not growing well, it means you need to move it. That's just give it a shot, try it out in a different spot, and then you'll actually get better results from that. Some of the other things that I learned is some areas of the yard, because they get more sunlight, they dry out faster. It's better to put plants there that like to be on the drier side versus areas that kind of sit more in the shade, which we're kind of going into now, where they can handle it a little bit more. This guy's a mangave. Turned into a giant monster for me. I've actually had to yank it out of the ground twice and pull the pups off, and have shared that in my local cacti and succulent society, where I just pass out cuttings because I end up with so many of them, as you can see. Just really need to start thinning this out with the amount. It's just a little bit crazy. More of the potted plants, and again, everything up on stands so that you can see, making sure that I'm not getting any of that mess and staining those pavers. And this giant jade that now has to be trimmed back because I can't see some of my rock. So I'm losing some of the design aesthetic that I originally had. And the fence, the doggy fence, it grew through the doggy fence. So it's kind of eating that. I'm going to have to fix that. So again, this is just one little portion of the yard. It was the original portion that I designed. And I'll give you a little bit of a view, and you can see how far along that goes. And that's the garden tour for today. If you like the content, please subscribe, like any of the content, provide comments if you face some of these challenges with the vertical areas and having to put pergolas in to try to, put that shade in and put that frost in. Again, zone 9B, semi-hostile to succulents, and that was my quick and easy way of having something that actually looked good, but prevented me from having to constantly run out all the time and put some type of support in place so that I could protect them from frost and from the heat. So again, that's the garden tour for today. A little portion of my backyard succulent and cacti crazy succulent obsession. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.